hour. But we're going to kick things off with the Detroit Tigers, who are fresh off of 3 consecutive wins. Now, before we take a step forward with this Detroit Tigers conversation, let me take a step back and start talking about something everyone can relate to, whether it's your kids, your wife, your husband. It doesn't matter. Let's take a big step backwards. There's a common saying: trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Now, in sports, you have to have somewhat of a short memory, right? That's what they always say. Hey, forget about the last at-bat. Go up and approach this one the exact same thing. In golf, right? Don't think about that last swing that you sent into the woods. Go drop your ball and have the best shot of your life next. You got to have a short memory in sports. But the general concept stays the same. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. For example, you ask your partner, will you do the dishes after you make dinner today? And let's say 12 of 13 days in a row, they do not do the dishes. But then they turn things around and do it 3 days in a row. On that 4th day, do you think they're going to do the dishes? History says no, despite the fact that in the last 3 days, they've done it. The Tigers have won 3 games in a row. And a lot of people I hear saying, well, the Tigers are back. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. That losing streak where they lost 12 of 13 does seem like it is in the past, and they've shaken that off their backs. I've even said that on this microphone. But that to me was more than just a little losing streak, a little skid in the schedule. That was a scar that I don't know if I can forget about for a while. Scars don't heal overnight. Scars last a long time. That's why they're called scars, whether they're emotional or physical. It's not something that you can just forget about. And that 12 of 13 losing streak isn't something I can just forget about. It's very reminiscent of 2023, Week 6 for the Detroit Lions, when they have this epic start. Everyone's gassing them up as one of the top teams in the league. Then they head to Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson pulls the Lions' pants down. For the rest of that regular season, the Lions did not win a game against a playoff team that wasn't named the Green Bay Packers. So for the rest of that season, despite all the wins that they picked up, despite them, having this awesome record and winning the North, in the back of my head, all I could do was think about that Week 6 game in Baltimore. It scarred me. With this Tigers team, I'm sorry. 3 games against, 2 of which were against Arizona, and then the last game against Toronto. These 3-game stretch, the fact that you've already won this series against Arizona, who's selling here at the deadline, it doesn't make me fully bought back into this team that is still the co-favorites to win the American League. The Tigers and the Yankees both sitting at plus 900 to win the World Series. Right? Vegas thinks that they're the favorites or the co-favorites with the Yankees. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. Now, luckily, they've got a chance to improve their team in the next 24 hours, 36 hours. The deadline's at 6 p.m. tomorrow. And I think there's some things that they can do in order to get themselves to be in a position to where I believe that they're the favorites once again in the American League. I did when they were on their win streak. But again, that losing streak, you lose 12 of 13, it scarred me. And it's not just, hey, you lost 12 of 13. Everybody has a bad stretch throughout the season. But find me a team that's had a stretch as bad as this Detroit Tigers team had, the couple days leading up to the All-Star break and then the 2 weeks after that. It was the only team in MLB history. This is very specific, but I think it gets the point across. With fewer than 25 extra base hits over a 13-game stretch, 125 or more Ks over a 13-game stretch, outscored by 50, outhit by 50. First team in MLB history to do that over that stretch of games. Now, you go through and look at the rest of the American League. Yankees, their best or their worst losing streak of the season, they went 6-16. It was a stretch at the end of June and July. They hit .238 and still had a .728 OPS during that stretch. They were losing. They weren't one of the worst historical teams in baseball. .728 OPS, .238 average compared to the Tigers' .200 average and .569 OPS. I keep telling you I think the Mariners are the scariest team, the biggest threat to the Tigers in the American League. Their biggest losing stretch of the season, they went 3-11. End of May into the middle of June, they hit 249 and had a 667 OPS, which is terrible, but still way better than what the Tigers just went through. It's a scar. I'm not going to forget about it. Scars don't disappear. Again, in sports, you have to have a short memory, but I'm sorry, I can't just forget about that stretch. I've forgiven them for that stretch, but I can't just forget about it. We talk about all these teams that are contending to win the American League. Most of the time, you sneak into the playoffs, and every team, even the favorites, have one weakness, have an Achilles heel. They've got that one plan. It's like the Death Star. There's one way to beat it. And for the Yankees, for the Mariners, most of these teams have 1 to 2 things. The Tigers have 4. The Tigers have 4 defined weaknesses. The starters. Right? We're right back to square one where the Tigers were at this point last season. It's Tarek Skubal and everybody else. Detroit announced yesterday, after Casey Mize got taken out after 59 pitches, he couldn't even get through 2 innings, that he's dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. This is a player that's very injury prone. They've announced that Troy Melton, who has played in 2 Major League Baseball games, has jumped Casey Mize in the rotation and is now the second pitcher in the rotation. The person who has played 2 games is your number 2 pitcher going into a playoff. That's scary, and it's an unknown variable, despite him having an awesome game, an awesome outing a few days back. The bullpen. Dan Dickerson, I love you. Save the Brant Herders turning things around, and this looks like a totally different pitcher. I don't need to hear it. There's enough evidence that this bullpen is not very good, and it's a liability when any of these guys are out there. The bats, they can disappear. Right? We already went through that 13-game stretch, one of the worst stretches in the history of baseball, offensively. I know they explode yesterday, right? They've exploded the last 3 days. They go 10 runs, 5 runs, 11 runs the past 3 days. The offense is there, but sometimes it's not. That's somewhat problematic. They're a little inconsistent on that end. And then your star player, someone who I love, right? I always talk about how in Major League Baseball, really in any sport, the way you tell whether or not your team is up to standard is if they pass the jersey test. How many of these guys on the team would you buy their jersey of? And in baseball, I think it's the hardest to achieve that because most of these guys aren't under long-term contracts anytime soon. I'm comfortable buying a Riley Green jersey. He's the face of the franchise. I can say with confidence, unlike with the Tarek Skubal situation, I can say with confidence with Riley Green, he's going to be a Tiger for life. They're going to sign him to a long-term extension. I've never hesitated. I've never believed or wavered from that thought. But the bottom line is Riley Green has a huge strikeout problem. 32% of his at-bats end in a strikeout. It's caused problems for this Tigers team. And he had 3 hits yesterday, 3-run home run. They're 3-0 since he shaved his beard and left the mustache. I get all that stuff. But we can pretend to ignore all the other stuff and say, hey, he's got a mustache. Look at that. It's all fun and games. Let's be very real with ourselves with 36 hours until the trade deadline. Less than. Do you think the Tigers are World Series contenders right now? I have a hard time saying that they're the favorites in the American League. I do not agree with Vegas. Vegas has them as the co-favorites with the Yankees. I think this team has one too many weaknesses to sit here and speak into this microphone and tell you they're the best team in the American League. They've got a chance to improve their team over the next 24, 36 hours with the deadline. How do you fix it? How do you make yourself the favorite? There's a guy across from you right now, 90 feet, a little bit more, in the visitor's dugout. His name is Gino Suarez. You go get that bat on your team, and it fixes your bats problem. It fixes your star player has a strikeout problem because guess what? You'd have a new star player, maybe not the face of the franchise, but a clear new best bat on the team. You can go call Arizona and get some bullpen guys too in the middle of the deal. Right? We'll go through a couple mock proposals later that kind of fix every Tigers issue that I just named. I don't think they're the favorites in the American League right now. They've got a chance to be in the next 36 hours. How do they improve this team? Do you believe that they're favorites right now, the way it stands? With this roster, do you think they can win a World Series? Because bottom line, I don't. I know they just won 3 games in a row. I know I'm kind of zagging here, but again, I'm not just going to blatantly block that 13-game stretch out of my mind. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. You can block that out of your mind, and I'm sure your life would be a lot more fun, filled with sunshine. But I can't. I just can't do it and then continue to do this show the right way. I have been scarred by that stretch. They have to make drastic improvements to this team in the next 24 hours for us to really have a chance to celebrate a World Series win. 989-8